going to be talking about the animal corporation's strategy to divide the animal rights movement. And we're going to start off with a little game. I'm going to read a statement, and then you can tell me whether you think that it's an animal activist who said the statement or somebody in the animal industry. The first one is, farmers don't intentionally want to cause harm to animals. Do you think that was said by somebody in the industry or somebody in the animal movement?
Industry.
Actually, that was an animal activist who said that. Now the next one. Working cooperatively with producers for the federal egg bill could alleviate some of the misery animals endure and promote their dignity. Who might have been saying that hens would have dignity?
Industry.
And it was actually an animal activist, surprisingly. Now here's a third one. We take one of our pigs, and every big holiday it's on the roaster, and we're having a whole hog barbecue. Was that somebody in the industry or somebody in the animal movement?
Animal industry.
Well, this one's kind of confusing because both answers are actually right. This was said by somebody who is a hog farmer who kills about 50,000 hogs a year but gets a paycheck from an animal organization. I don't know how to classify this one, but it's a great example of how the lines blurred between the animal movement and the industry. Now let's backtrack a bit. When I started in the animal rights movement in the early 90s, there was no such thing as humane meat. Nobody had ever heard of it before. It didn't exist. The moral question was simply, is it right to eat animals and their products? And the activists agreed that it wasn't, and our mission was to convince others that it wasn't. I became involved with an animal rights group, one that had a sanctuary, in 1994. And in 2011, I started noticing things that in my gut were wrong. Money seemed to be more important than making vegans. I questioned it, and I told that nothing had changed, but I knew it had. I made the painful decision to stop my support of this organization, and breaking away was one of the hardest things I've ever done. This group had become a corporation and started acting like one. A friend sent me a link to an essay called Invasion of the Movement Snatchers, written by James Levesque of Tribe of Heart. And Tribe of Heart was the organization that did the powerful documentary The Witness, and also Peaceable Kingdom. Remember the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers? For those of you too young to remember, I'm going to remind you of the plot. Aliens to take over the world were replacing people with pods that they had grown to look like the person. But they didn't exactly act like the person. The people in their lives were noticing that something was different and something just didn't feel right. When they would point it out, the pod people would say that they were wrong and that everything was the same. This is what happened in my group when I questioned things, my animal group that I was involved with. They told me that nothing was wrong and kind of made me feel like I was crazy, but I knew that something was wrong and that something was just off. The article, Invasion of the Movement Snatchers, talks of the industry strategy to divide our movement, and it actually predicted everything that's happening now. The article tells of a speech made by a PR person to the Cattlemen's Association in 1991, and it outlined how they could derail the animal movement and the economic threat that they posed. They recommended a three-step plan. The first step is to identify the radicals. The radicals believe that that animals have rights, and you can't manipulate these people. So they suggested that the industry just ignore them. Second, you take the people who want to do the right thing for the animals, the idealists, and then you turn them into realists, people who give up their dreams and settle for what's possible. And you do this by identifying the opportunists, the leaders in the movement who like to be seen and have power, and they like having followers and being in the spotlight. You reach out to the opportunists, and you get them to agree that it's in both of their interests to work together. The PR firm said that the key is to give the opportunists the perception of partial victory, so they can feel like heroes to their followers for solving the problem. The animal industry, like most businesses, looks at the changes in society and adapts to make money, and this is pretty evident with the environmental movement. Major companies have developed products to meet the public's new need to save the planet. And now all you hear is green this and green that. Well, buying these products make people feel like they're helping the environment. The same thing is happening with the animal issue. People were becoming concerned for the way animals were being treated. So the animal producers solved the problem by creating the so-called humane products. Words like humane, cage-free, crate-free, organic, free-range These were all ways to make people feel good about eating meat. The humane products are a perfect antidote for the guilt that people feel about eating animals. But humane labels make a mockery out of an authentic movement of conscience. The animal producers reached out to the animal industry leaders to collaborate on solving this problem together. They turned focus on how the animals are treated and not on the ethical questions of is it right to eat them. To me, this is like sitting down with Hitler to try to improve conditions on the concentration camp victims. It just isn't done. It's making a deal with the devil. And as animal groups and the animal industry have commingled, their language, values, and goals have become virtually the same, as we saw in my little game at the beginning of this talk. And the results? More money for both groups. The animal groups can't offend people if you tell them what they want to hear, and that it's okay to eat meat, milk, and eggs. The animal groups might still talk about wanting to convince people to not eat animal products, but it's kind of like they say to them, it's better to go vegan unless you don't want to. And if you don't want to, you can eat the humane products, and then everybody's happy. But hear me if you don't hear anything else in this entire talk. There is no such thing as humanely raised or killed animals. There is no such thing. It's a myth perpetuated by the animal industries, and there's some animal organizations that unfortunately have embraced this for their own agenda, which is hidden from their supporters. But the leaders don't want you to look too hard. They want you to follow them and believe what they say. And I've seen things that I never thought I would see happen in our movement. I've seen animal leaders now sitting on the boards of organizations that promote the raising and killing of animals for food. There's now leaders in our movement telling people to eat the so-called humane meat if they don't want to go vegan. Non-vegan celebrities are being heralded as champions for our cause, like Chef Wolfgang Puck. Non-vegan companies are sponsoring animal groups events. And John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, was a keynote speaker at an animal conference last October. Whole Foods sells a lot of meat at his stores. He arranges for a lot of animals to be killed, to be the so-called humane products at his stores. He sponsors an annual butcher contest as well as a meat promoting event called Meatopia. You can go to meatopia.com to see more about this program that's started by the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey. Is the person who's responsible for killing millions of animals a year really a person who should be made into a hero at an animal conference? Animal farmers are now being hired by animal organizations. A hog farmer, Joe Maxwell, is now getting a paycheck from a major animal group. He gave a speech to other hog farmers that you can pull up on YouTube. He's excited to work for this animal group, and he says that they're helping his family continue to raise, or actually kill, hogs. Is this where we want the animal movement heading? The vegan activists today have a lot of opposition to overcome when talking to people about not eating animals, and everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. You hear how it's a tradition to eat meat, it's a habit to eat meat, and that people like the taste, and that they're always going to eat it. The activists have to deal with the pressures of their family and not always fitting into society because they're the only vegan in the room. But now they also have to work at debunking the humane meat myth, the myth of the humane animal products. And if abolition is the ultimate goal and veganism is the single most effective thing we can do, why are the animal organizations making the job of vegan activists so much harder? If there's a lot of debate in our movement right now over the current proposed egg bill. I'm not going to go into the egg bill step by step, but I'm going to encourage you to read it if you haven't done so already. Just Google HR 3798, and you can read it and see exactly what it says and make your own opinion about it. But the question I had was, why would the CEO of the United Egg Farmers, Jean Gregory, reach out to an animal group leader to propose collaborating on this bill? Why would an industry leader agree to spend money on changes that laws weren't demanding? The answers are right out of Mr. Gregory's mouth in a speech to egg farmers that you can also view on YouTube. He made the following two statements. First, he said, "We're concerned about how animal activists and their social agenda may limit our ability to produce eggs in the future." And he also said, We're concerned about the state ballot initiatives and their impact